Good morning, it's Thursday, 7th of October. I'd like to welcome everybody to this morning's Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to start by, first of all, just taking our agenda items, and agenda item number 1 is apologies for absence. Chris, do we have any? Oh, Leslie, sorry, my apologies, Leslie.
Chair, I've received apologies from Councillors Scott and Taylor.
Thank you, Leslie. Those are noted. If we can now take the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held in September, what I propose to do in terms of accuracy is just go through page by page. So if you do have any issues around accuracy or clarification, please indicate. So page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, 5, and finally page 6. So there's no indication of any issues there. So what I'll do is I will sign those off at the end of the meeting as an accurate record of that meeting. We now move on to an important item, which is the disclosure of members' interests. Now, I'm sure we're all interested in everything that's happening this morning, but does anyone have any particular individual pecuniary interest in this morning's meeting that they need to declare? Paul Rickard.
I think just note, Chair, that we obviously have a school next to one of the items that's discussed today, Church of England School next to Richard Coates. Thank you. Okay,
that's noted. Okay, and of course, elected members' standing notice of declarations stand for all meetings, so thank you very much for that. We're now moving on to the forward plan of key decisions, which on your agenda items for pages 7 onwards. I think you are taking that, Chris.
I am, thank you. The forward plan, there's 4 items on the forward plan for facts that are at this meeting. So the first 4 substantive reports will all be going to Cabinet on the 12th of October. And that's the only thing that's on the forward plan for facts at the moment. So it's more or less just for members to note.
Thank you very much. And now we move on to the substantive items for this morning's Scrutiny Committee. And actually, it's one of the, I think, forgotten strengths of scrutiny committees that we can have deliberations and considerations on reports. And 4 of the items that we're discussing this morning, our views will be given to a Cabinet meeting, which is taking place next week, Cabinet of the County Council. So the first thing what I want to do is to move on to the proposal to amalgamate Seaton Sluice Middle School and Whittrigg Middle School. And Sue Aviston, you're going to take that report for us this morning.
Yes, that's correct, Rob. Yes, I've just set out perhaps some of the highlights from the report and really to reiterate what the request for the report, the consultation, is from the governing body of the Seaton Valley Federation. So Seaton Valley Federation makes up 3 schools in the Astley Partnership. That's Astley High School, Seaton Sluice Middle School and Whittrigg Middle School. So this is a request to the council to carry out this consultation on their behalf as they are a local authority maintained school. Just some of the detail there that the consultation also talks about the site that these schools will be located on. So we are currently carrying out an outline business case for investment that the council has already earmarked into the buildings for Astley High School and Whittrigg Community High School as well. But the OBC is very different and is a different process. What we're talking about today is the consultation on the merger of the 2 middle schools. So the reason for the request behind the proposal, it has arisen in light of the capital project that we are undertaking to provide new buildings for Astley and Whittrigg. These 2 schools already are co-located on the high school site that is based in Seaton Delaval. Although the initial project was limited to the provision of new buildings for Astley and Whittrigg, in the course of planning the project over the last 12-18 months, the federated governing body has identified a number of significant educational and financial benefits for all students within the federation, and that would be result in the co-location of all 3 schools. The benefits are clearly identified in Appendices 1 in a letter from the federated governing body, and there's also a summary of those benefits identified in paragraph 4 of the report. But these include, in brief, the benefits of being able to teach in new, modern environments, improved transition, bringing all the children together at an earlier age through the middle to high transition. They would also be able to access specialist support because there is also an additional resource provision on the existing high school and will also be in any new buildings that are developed. They also feel that there'll be a consistent curriculum across the Federation, and that will be easier to be managed with everybody being together. Improved quality of teaching and learning, CPD, across the phases can be improved as a result of this. Access to improved sporting facilities, new facilities obviously, and perhaps some of the items around all-weather sporting facilities, because the current site is currently quite a wet one. Improved student support systems as well that can be consistently applied across the whole Federation. There'd also be financial benefits, economies of scale, and the Federation have already experienced that when Whitrig moved to the site of the high school, so they have already got a practical experience around how they can achieve that. And overall, the proposals, I believe, will improve educational outcomes for the young people that attend the school. I'd just like to move on a little bit to about consultation and how that will work if approved by Cabinet. So there will be a 6-week period of informal consultation, and that has to be within term time to meet the regulations that we have to adhere to when we're making changes to schools. So the consultation would start next Wednesday, the 13th of October, and would conclude on Wednesday, the 1st of December. So during this time, a consultation document will be published on the Council's website, to which all interested parties would have access. The relevant links will also be circulated to all stakeholders, and that includes parents, members of the community, school staff, and partnerships, schools and parents as well. The consultation document will set out the potential implications of the proposals on the catchment area of the 3 schools, playing fields, again statutory consultation around any changes to playing fields and the implications, any staffing implications, and individual meetings will be held with staff, the governing body and union representation to look at any implications on staffing. We would also seek the views of the community around any vacant school sites that would become available if the proposal were to be implemented, and there would also be implications around home to school transport that we will also reference in the document. The report also sets out in detail in paragraph 7 as to how the consultation events will be held. But the format and nature and time frame of these events will be driven by the need to ensure the health and safety of consultees in light of COVID, and therefore probably for the first time we'll be holding some events virtually rather than in person. But we would still hope to have some form of in-person consultation in order that individual questions can be asked and information can be given, particularly to parents of those children affected by any change. During the informal consultation, interested parties will also be asked their views on the proposal, and we'll also ask if they've got any alternative ideas that can deliver the benefits that have been identified by the federated governing body. And as I pointed out at the outset of talking about the report, we are also developing what we call an outline business case for the investment that the Council has highlighted to invest in buildings in the Seaton Valley Federation. And therefore the outline business case will continue to be developed along the same time frame, and ultimately the decisions will come together at some point during the process. We are currently looking at sites available to develop the proposal, but we're actually not in a position currently to share those due to the commercial sensitivities around the work that we're doing within the outline business case. But it is hoped, as is usually the case with informal consultation, that additional information comes out during that period of informal consultation, that we're then able to share more information as the process evolves. Thank you. I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sue. So we've had a detailed narrative there on what this informal consultation looks like. And more importantly, the fact that this has been driven by two things. One, a financial commitment from this local authority to invest in schools in that area, which was actually done a number of years ago when we made that commitment. But secondly, a formal request from the governing body of the Seaton Valley Federation of Schools, which I think in of itself should give us some confidence that, you know, that they believe that there is some merit in some of the informal proposals which are being put forward. Does anyone want to make any comments or views on this? Right, so we are going to be presenting our views to Cabinet next week. So it sounds as though everyone's very happy with what you've said there, Sue. So, Paul, if I can bring you in. Paul Rickard.
Can I just ask one problem with the financial modelling? Does this mean there'll be one lump sum removed, Sue? And has that been factored into the governing body in terms of that finance? Because it's over £100,000. I just wanted to, in that sense, I'm sure it has been, but just some reassurance for us all that that's been factored in.
Yes, Paul, it has. Yes, that they totally understand that they're going to lose their 120,000 lump sum, and I've built that into their modelling. I think they feel that they can obviously still benefit from that. And I think another driver is there'll also be one less Ofsted inspection as well. So I think one compensates for the other, according to the head teacher.
I'm sure Ofsted aren't watching this, Sue, because we always love Ofsted coming to Northumberland, don't we? Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just prudent for us to point out that in the past, the authority has been sort of pointed at, I'm going to be very polite there, choose my words carefully, at making and forcing decisions on schools to make changes and removing schools and forcing them, you know, to get rid of that school. We're closing that one down, as it were, and, you know, squashing schools in. This isn't an authority decision. This hasn't come from the council. This, you know, is coming from the governing body themselves. You know, it is their choice to do this, and I just felt it was appropriate to make that clear. You know, this isn't coming from us, as it were. This is, you know, a request and a suggestion that is coming from them, and they've come forward with this. And I just thought it was, you know, relevant to point that out.
Yeah. So, are there any other comments on this? No? And again, I think, Councillor Swinburne, you make the valid point there. And it is very clearly written in this paper today that during the informal consultation process, views will be taken. And if there is a requirement to modify or to amend or to bring additional information, that the proposals can be modified and then will be looked at again. But the key thing is there is a 6-week period for people to engage in person, online, through representation, and that I'm sure will also include elected members as well to do this, in order to, and we perhaps shouldn't forget this is predicated on a significant multi-million-pound investment in education in Seaton Valley. I actually visited the site a number of years ago when I was cabinet member. It had pretty bad windows, pretty bad electrics. It was not a fantastic school, but actually could be better. And this administration's got a track record of investing in our school stock since 2017, and long may that continue. So this is a wonderful opportunity for residents in that area to, you know, support, provide additional information should they need to, and indeed to make suggestions, all of which will be noted. And that is very clearly in the report. So because this is going to be going, our views are going to be going to Cabinet next week, it is important that we understand that there are 5 recommendations which we are asked to note. I just want to make sure that everyone is happy with those. And then what I want to do, because this is such an important report, is to take a show of hands in support of allowing this to go forward to Cabinet for them to make their decision on going ahead with an informal consultation. So if we can just please have a show of hands on that, please. That is unanimous. So thank you very much for that. And thank you, Sue, for presenting that. We now have agenda item number 6, which again is another report which will be going to Cabinet. And this is a report which is setting out proposals for Atkinson House Special School, which is in Seg Hill. And I'm going to hand over again to Sue Aviston to take us through this report. And then again, I will take any questions or comments from members of the committee. So over to you, Sue.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Yes, as you've already said, this report sets out proposals for Atkinson House Special School that is in Seg Hill. It's currently a secondary provision for boys with social, emotional and mental health needs. And the proposal is to look at relocating the school to a new site on Thornhill Road, the former Richard Coates C of E primary school in Ponteland. And at the same time, we're also going to ask to consult on the change of designation for the school as well, to change from a single sex provision to a co-educational provision, enabling the school to take girls as well as boys. And this is in light of the growing number of girls who have been assessed as having SEMH needs in Northumberland. And the proposal would take effect from the 1st of September 2022, which is a short timescale, but I'll explain throughout the report as to the reason for the urgency to make these changes. So FACS will be aware in Northumberland, due to many reports that we've brought through, that in Northumberland the number of children and young people that have been diagnosed with having autism, social, emotional and mental health needs have been increasing, with significant additional capacity in the county's 9 special schools being required year on year for the last 10 years. So overall, this steady upward trend in demand for special school places equates to an average of about 7% year on year. And as I've already said, previous reports have highlighted and decisions have been made through both FACS and Cabinet to support the growth, and this has resulted in the capacity in our special schools doubling over the last 10 years. The increase, in light of the increased demand for places, especially for those children, as I've already said, with social, emotional and mental health, Northumberland bid and was successful with an application to open a free school, again reported many times here to Scrutiny. The construction of the new school formed part of a national free school programme that is managed by the Capital Delivery Team within the DFE. Unfortunately, the construction of the new school is going to be delayed. I think we've experienced 2 or 3 delays, but the latest delay means that the school will not be open in time for September 22 and is more likely to be in the autumn term of 2023. Therefore, leaving the local authority with some issues of how to increase capacity for next September. So already having grown capacity within our special school primary sector to meet the growing demand, it was hoped that the secondary demand would have been met through the opening of the new free school. But as I've already said, now there is a delay in opening the school. There's now an urgent need to grow capacity to meet the needs of the cohort of children that are already in our special schools, as well as those children transitioning into Year 7 that will require a place for September 2022. So given the expansion that we have created in our 9 existing schools over the last 10 years, there's very little opportunity to expand any of the existing school sites within the timescales that are available. Therefore, given again the delay of opening the free school, we could have funded additional temporary arrangements to meet the demand in the interim. But again, these are some of our more vulnerable children, and actually moving children around the county and having temporary arrangements, we don't feel that that is necessarily in their best interests. So it is proposed that Atkinson House relocates to the vacant school buildings on Thornhill Road in Ponteland. This will create additional capacity at the site, will enable the school to expand its provision by moving from a single sex to co-educated, as well as providing additional places that will be required for September. The site at Thornhill Road is in the process of transferring back to the council following the relocation of Richard Coates Primary School that happened at the start of the year. A budget for carrying out the capital works that would need to take place at the site and buildings to make it suitable for the needs of the school pupils will be developed during this informal consultation. But there is funding in place and would be funded from existing grants that we've received from central government to grow capacity in our special schools, as well as funding that already exists within the council's medium-term financial plan to invest in our special school estate. There are a number of implications within the report, one of which is free home to school transport. So all the children currently on the roll at Atkinson House are provided with free transport by the County Council, and this would continue should the decision be made to approve the relocation of the school to the site in Ponteland. It is expected that transport costs would likely to increase due to the relocation and additional pupils accessing the site. So not only some pupils will have to travel further, some pupils will have to travel less. However, some costs, as I've said, can be offset because of shorter journeys. Should Cabinet approve the consultation, we would report back the detailed costings and the implications on the home to school transport budget at the end of the consultation period. Again, if informal consultation was approved, again, this would begin along the same timelines as we've discussed for the Seaton Valley Federation. So would begin on the 13th of October and would close on the 1st of December. During this time, a separate document for Atkinson House would be produced, would be shared with all interested parties and stakeholders, particularly the parents of the children and young people currently attending the school, as well as the potential parents that would be likely to relocate to the school. The report also sets out in detail in paragraph 8 as to how the consultation events would be held. And again, the format, nature, timescales for these events would be driven to ensure consultee health and safety in light of COVID, and therefore some of the events, as we've already mentioned, would take place virtually. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you again, Sue. Does anyone want to make a comment on this? Has any observations? Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you, Chair. Increasing the capacity for meeting these needs is a welcome benefit. We're already aware of that. It's a matter that's came in front of this committee on a number of occasions. What I did want to ask is, we're changing this from a single sex offering to a mixed sex. Where at the moment are these other ones, where are we meeting those needs at the moment?
They're obviously the younger children currently in the system needing places for September. So some will come via the feeder primary special schools. And we have been meeting that demand at some of our other special schools, Cleaswell Hill, Collingwood, for instance. But those schools are now at their maximum capacity. And in terms of any more development on the site, we will probably receive objections through planning. Most of our school sites are at capacity, as I've said within the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. I was just concerned that we might have been sending them outside of the area, that's all, which would be an additional cost. And obviously there's going to be a saving there if we're keeping it inside the area. But another thing I just wanted to ask is, what's the sort of catchment area? I mean, are we just talking Northumberland, or are we going to be bringing people from outside of Northumberland? You know, what sort of area are we talking about?
Yes, so predominantly the places will be for children in Northumberland. You'll be aware that the free school was a partnership with ourselves, Newcastle and North Tyneside, but all authorities know that for the coming 12 months that they would need to address their own capacity issues. We just identified there will be a limit we wouldn't want to double Atkinson House overnight, therefore meeting our own needs in the transition period is very much the model that we will implement. Thank
you, Chair.
Thank you.
Just to say that anything that is going to provide additional capacity is you know, a no-brainer, really. Thank you.
Okay, I have 2 speakers indicate, 3 now, 4. So I'm going to take Councillor Gordon-Stewart first, then Councillor Dunn, then I'll come to Paul. And Mr. Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the written report and what you've given here today so verbally. You have outlined the transport issues there. Because these children will be coming on transport, could we look at saving the environment, saving them time as well? I'm thinking a lot of children are taken to specialist schools through taxis as well as buses. Mark's just mentioned there about the catchment area. Where are the kids from? Have we got are they mainly from southeast Northumberland, or you know where I'm coming from, Sue?
Yeah, predominantly, because that's where the schools has been located. Relocating it to Ponteland is a more central location, and we currently haven't got any SEMH provision at all in the Tyne Valley, and therefore the school relocating will mean that the catchment area can grow and more children will be able to attend from the Tyne Valley without long travel distances, as they currently do to get to Cleeswell Hill, Collingwood in Morpeth. So the relocation also will help support our overall strategy in education of educating children as close to their home communities as we can.
Thank you very much. So Collingwood also in Prudhoe as well as in Morpeth. Just add that there's a large amount of building work going to take place in the Newcastle area, possibly on Greenbelt, which we don't build on. But will that have any impact upon the school?
No, it shouldn't, because the places are for Northumberland. We will commission places for Northumberland children. If there is additional capacity, applications can always be met from Newcastle, but we would look to do our own first. A little bit how Ponteland schools work, as you know.
I think Kath McAvoy-Cole wanted to come in with some additional...
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. Just to say that as part of our school travel plans, we always look at any potential climate or carbon reduction methods. To do that, our school transport team, to their credit, manage a significant number of journeys every day, and they're always looking to see how they can more efficiently provide those journeys moving forward. And then just as an aside to Councillor Swinburne's issue that he raised about increasing capacity, I think we are trying to get the balance between increasing capacity for those children who absolutely need specialist provision, but also trying to encourage and facilitate our mainstream schools to be as inclusive as they can be within the curriculum that they offer. So we're trying to get that balance to make sure that the numbers, that we're not placing too many children in our special schools.
Great, thank you. Councillor Dunn, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question's more in relation to the Gilbert Ward Academy, and sort of interested to know what the hold-ups have been with this. I think Sue said this was the 3rd one, so that was one bit. And then going on from there, if that academy had come off in time, would this still have been considered?
No, this proposal wouldn't necessarily be considered at this time. It might have been considered in a more broad strategy that we are currently developing around investment and capacity growth within our special schools. But it's probably coming ahead of the process that we would have done for the whole county. Delays to do with Gilbert Ward, I think, are commercial ones. You might be aware of, obviously, price increases within the construction market, the delay on material availability. I think all of those have compounded in contract negotiations with the DFE and the preferred contractor. So I think that's what that's where it's come down to.
I have Paul Rickard from the diocese.
Obviously, Sue, we've discussed this in terms of we absolutely welcome this provision and think it's fantastic that the local authority are prepared to invest in this way. I think just some reassurance from officers about how the site would physically work in terms of historically that was a bottleneck for traffic, and I know what Gordon said there about people coming from all over into the area, and historically there would have been more children because obviously it was a middle school previously. But just in terms of, I'd like to hope officers would absolutely look at the safeguarding of the site and how that would be managed moving forwards, particularly as a nursery next door, primary school. There's already quite a lot of activity in that area, so I think just some reassurance for those schools would probably be useful at this point to be clear about how it could actually work in practice. But absolutely welcome the fact that it's an increase in places, which I think is desperately needed.
So yes, we will guarantee that there will be safeguard measures in place. Having already had a meeting with the head teacher in the neighbouring school, and we will once the proposals approved for consultation, we will get a working group with the head teacher of Atkinson House, the neighbouring school and the nursery, so that everybody's really clear and part of the development of any proposals around safeguarding and the site overall.
Great, thank you. Mr Hodgson.
Yeah, just 3 parts to the question, Sue. In terms of percentage, how does that translate into actual numbers? Also as well, are those numbers matching national figures, or is this something that's unique? This increase is this unique to Northumberland? And also as well, if this rate was to continue, presumably you've got plans, presumably to add to capacity within the current group of special schools, or possibly again have to build some new ones.
Yes, so in terms of Northumberland and the national picture, I think Audrey will probably be better to comment, but I think we are under the national average in terms of the number of children that we've got with EHCPs requiring specialist school places. So overall, Northumberland is slightly under the national picture. In terms,
And just so, but in terms of, you've got it down here as percentage, how does that translate into actual numbers? How many children are we talking about?
for Atkinson House or overall?
No, you've got an increase of 7% a year on average, which range from 2 to 12. How many children are we
It's
actually...
in the next paper, actually, under school organisation.
Right.
So it does actually give some indications
sorry.
as to how that actually grows. But I think what I've said in the paper is that in the last 10 years we've doubled the capacity in our special schools.
Right.
So the actual number, sorry, I haven't got the top of my head, but it is actually included in our predictions within the school organisation plan, which is the next paper. And we are very much focusing on ISD, SEMH, and so you can see that numbers are rising, particularly in ISD. I think something like 800 and something currently. Our 5-year prediction is that going up to nearly 1,200.
Would that mean increased capacity?
Yeah.
Or building work, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we are doing the 5-year look ahead and developing a
Yeah.
strategy to address those needs.
Brilliant.
But then that's a separate piece of work. But we know the work that we would be doing at Atkinson House would form part of that overall strategy and would give us opportunity to do further development actually on that site as well.
Got you. Thanks.
You happy with those?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Are there any other comment? Oh, sorry, Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, just with the Gilbert Ward Academy, whereabouts is that going to be built? I feel like I've read something that kind of I'll think about it.
It's on the old site of the Princess Louise First School in Blythe. In Blythe, more or less directly opposite the leisure centre. Yeah. There was an old school site there opposite St Wilfrid's playing fields, I think.
Fine. So if the children obviously from sort of South East Northumberland who are going to Atkinson House at the moment, when that moves to Pontyland, if they didn't want to travel that distance, when the Gilbert Ward Academy comes through, would there be potential for them to go there rather than travelling to Pontyland because that's going to be much closer, or is that not?
Yeah, I mean, there are annual reviews in EHCPs, so again, if that's the desire of the parents, the need of the child, that would certainly be looked at. But again, nobody would be forced to move. It would be very much in the benefit of the child, with all the professionals supporting that decision. And the idea behind, again, Atkinson House is currently our only secondary provision for social, emotional and mental health and ISD. And actually, if the place breaks down there and, not every child settles in their first school, we do actually have to relocate children out of county. So the idea behind growing capacity at Atkinson House, as well as having the free school, it gives an alternative. If a place breaks down at the free school, children have an alternative still to be within Northumberland. So the overall strategy for the growth at Atkinson House fits with that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to provide some assurance, I think, to the committee more broadly, this is a key priority for us as an education and skills team. We are acutely aware of the rising numbers. There is a do-nothing scenario which just increases costs year on year. It exacerbates potentially that travel issue that Councillor Ferguson has mentioned, and actually what we're very keen to do is be able to do that meeting need much closer to home. So we talked about that earlier. So this is a lot of work with our special schools, but it's also with our mainstream schools. So this is about how do we, where it's appropriate, keep our children with education, healthcare plans in mainstream education. What is it that we need to support the schools to be able to continue to be able to do that? And actually, what is the model for our special schools, both in compulsory education, but then looking at the post-16 education as well? So we currently have an awful lot of our children continuing post-16 at that point, young people in their special schools. We have been able to work not just with Northumberland, but with Northumberland College around expanding their facilities and premises. And so we're hoping to be able to work with the whole system to be able to make some changes and make this more effective, make it more efficient, and ensure that our children and young people are in the best place that they need at that particular time, but also that they are able to make the level of progression that's appropriate for them as well. And we'll continue. We think this is a long piece of work. This isn't a short term at all, and there'll be many changes to come, and we'll bring all these to the committee at that particular point.
Yeah. And I think what Audrey says there is a really valid point, because one of the unintended consequences of the delay in the Gilbert Ward build is the fact that it's probably brought a little closer that more holistic approach that we've had for a number of years into how we support those young people in our education system with additional needs. So actually this is probably a good thing, having that delay, because it's brought this on. And as Audrey's rightly pointed out, this has been some thinking which has been going on for quite a number of years under this administration about how we can improve not just educational outcomes from mainstream schools, but for those young people who need that additional support and may in fact need it. If they cannot get it within a mainstream school, may need to go to a specialist support unit. And I think we should acknowledge the fact that Sue and her team with Kath and Audrey took part in a competitive bidding process to get that free school into Blythe. You know, we were up against some stiff competition and we won that, and that's really good news for people, for our young people in Northumberland. So we have choice, and that's a really good thing. So, unless anyone else is wanting to speak, if I can summarise this, because this report will be going to Cabinet for next week. So we've had some indication around assurance on transport issues, some of the operational issues on the sites, including safeguarding, which we've been assured will be dealt with. And we've also had from Gordon Stewart and others some questions around how we can make some of that transport more sustainable. And what I would also like to add as well, because it is alluded to in the report, but whilst the governing body are very supportive of this, and obviously we're going to be engaging with parents and other organisations, I would just like assurance as well that we're also talking to the students as well, and making sure that they feel very comfortable about this move and actually see the huge benefits that this brings. And more importantly, the huge benefit of going to a co-educational system rather than a single-sex unit, because unless you go to a really posh school, normally we're all mixed, which we are today. So, yeah, I think on the basis of that, we have a clear recommendation that we're happy for this to progress to Cabinet, for them to make the ultimate decision. But again, reinforcing the point that the governing body of Atkinson House are very supportive of this as well. So you see the 4 key things we're asked to note. Again, because this is going to Cabinet, I would like a show of hands just to make sure that, you know, we have a view which is expressed to Cabinet. So for those who are in support of allowing this to progress to Cabinet for a decision, please show your hands. And again, of those able to vote, that is unanimous. Yep, so if that can pass on. So thank you very much for that, Sue, and members, for your views on that. We're now moving on to item agenda number 7, which is school organisation plan. Someone we've not heard from this morning, Sue Avison.
Thank you. I'll make this one short and sweet, I think. So, yes, the report in front of you today is to seek Cabinet approval for the publication of our second iteration of the school organisation plan, which is from 22 to 24 now. Noting that there will also be an annual update, so FACS members will be aware that we update the data and we will bring you a review every year to show you how we monitor our school places. So you will also be aware that the publication of a school organisation plan is no longer a statutory requirement from the local authority. However, school organisation planning assists officers, schools, parents and partners to understand how the availability of school places in the county is monitored, how the need for adding or removing school places is identified and implemented, and how additional places are delivered and funded in the relevant school partnership. And it also provides information on changes to organisational structures when we carry out school changes. It also identifies the number of opening and closing schools, capital works that are undertaken, and the number of schools that convert to become academies. So it's very much a bible of information about schools and how we plan. There is an amendment in the report, actually on page 2 of the report and page 32 of your bundle. Actually, the school organisation plan is for 2021 to 24, not 21 to 2018. So apologies for that. A few reports being written all at the same time, so that one got missed. Apologies. So the new school organisation plan is attached in full at appendices 1 of your report. It is quite a substantial document and goes into a lot of detail and provides a lot of data and information for you. And the majority of that remains in the same format that you will be familiar with, but there are some additional or expanded sections of the new plan. So I'll just highlight those for you as well. So set out on page 32 of the committee papers also identify that. So the managing of surplus places, we are setting out a more robust approach to dealing with surplus places and look to rebalance places to support our small rural schools. We will continue to provide, to meet our education priority of providing education as close as to the pupils' home community as possible. And this approach, we feel, also supports the Council's climate change action plan for 21-23. So overall, just tying together some overall policies. There's just some interesting facts, and you'll see we get challenge regularly from the Department of Education around the number of surplus places that we have within our schools in Northumberland. And really just to point out, you know, some of our highest are in our the far west of our county, with Hayden Bridge, who currently has the highest number of surplus places in Northumberland, with 43%. And Berwick is second with 32%. So you can see where our county borders others, that's where we have our most significant challenges in terms of surplus places. However, here in Morpeth, that has the fewest number of surplus places, with just 7%. So very much it's making sure that we're getting the right places available at the right time in the right place as well, which is very much the driver behind the school organisation plan. We've also made changes in the plan in section 4.5 around housing building numbers. So we've published those on a partnership by partnership basis. So again, ties quite nicely into what I was just saying around surplus places being the lowest in Morpeth. You can see from the information within the plan, actually the house build numbers are the highest, and therefore growing capacity in our schools in Morpeth is obviously something that we will be doing and have been doing for a number of years. But the plan just brings all of that information together. We have also enhanced under section 7 of the school partnerships on whether individual school partnerships will be impacted by that house building. So again, not only partnership overall, but then we've talked about within the commentary, and whether there are any proposals for rebalancing surplus places as well. So again, proposals around Hayden Bridge and Hexham. We will look at those as part of our admission arrangements moving forward, and we'll be consulting on those in the autumn term this year. We've also enhanced our section around special educational needs under section 6.1, which ties quite nicely to the conversation we've had this morning about growing capacity at Atkinson House. So again, there's some information, some more data, particularly around ISD, SEMH, because that is the area for the most significant growth within our specialist provision. And I think I said to... 841 children currently with ASD, and we're predicting that will be 1,188 by 2025. So you can see we have got that trajectory in terms of growth for those children that will support the development both at Atkinson House and the opening of the new free school as well. And you'll find all of that information in the school organisation plan on page 26 to 33, and we'll then be enhancing that again over the next 12 months. I think that's everything on the school organisation plan.
Thank you, Sue. Do we have any comments, observations? Paul Rickard.
Busy this morning. Just a couple of things. Just for the colleagues, Newborough, Cradside and Hedden aren't in as Church of England schools. They haven't got that designation. I'm sure it's just a typo, Sue, in terms of that. And the other thing was just obviously to update that NCAT is now de-amalgamated its primaries, but I'm conscious of timing of report. They're now separate primary schools as well, which might have some impact as we move forward. Thank you, Chair.
I think we can note those. Councillor Swinburne.
Excuse me, thank you, Chair. I note in the recommendations on number 3, it says that it be circulated to schools and other partners for comment, followed by the publication on the Council's website. I don't know whether it was the end of last year or early this year when this last came to this committee. At the time, I asked if we could make sure that all elected members received a copy of this or a link to. And the reason for that is there's a significant amount of information in here with regards to schools, admission numbers, the planning and calculation that goes in when a housing developer comes to the council, you know, and says, I want to build 500 houses in this area, and all of that is taken into consideration with regards to school admission numbers when that development is you know, going to take place. And as you're probably aware yourself, residents, you know, start to pass comment and ask questions. Oh, they're building all these houses. Do we have enough space in the schools? All that information is within this document, and it saves time for elected members to be able to access that and know that, rather than, you know, having to come back to officers themselves and to raise these queries. So I would just ask that when this is available, you know, and it is gone through Cabinet and it is published, can we please make sure that all elected members have access to it and the updates, etc., because there is so much there that answers these questions directly for elected members that they can then pass on, you know, to the residents themselves, and it is really a one-stop shop. There's so much in there. It's so valuable. Thank you.
I think we can do that. Any other comments? I just want to say a few things myself. And again, it kind of reinforces what's been said. This is a really, really important document. So I know for a fact that our school organisation planning resulted in us putting extra capacity into Blythe, into Morpeth, into Seaton Valley in the past, because it is absolutely imperative that when we have people living in our county, that they can get their schools and get their children educated to you know, a really good standard. So this is a really important living document, and as Sue has alluded, it's constantly evolving. And I think that's a really, really good thing, and should always be linked to the capacity when building, which we're coming on to a second report on that. But also as well, I just think it's probably a really good opportunity, because I know Sue mentioned there about Hayden Bridge High School with its number of surplus places. Hayden Bridge was under threat of closure. It had a very tortuous time under a previous academy chain known as Bright Tribe. Please don't get me started on that one. but they still owe us money. I just want to say that despite all of that, the school, we put confidence in the school. We invested around £5 million in the school. It's got a fantastic vocational offer. It's had massive improvement, and that's been reflected in the fact that it's gone out of special measures now. And that should give confidence to the community in the west of our county to actually have their kids educated there. Fantastic school, fantastic teaching staff. And I just want to put on record my thanks not just to the teaching staff and the leadership team there, but also to all of the support network which came out of this council to preserve and protect Hayden Bridge. And I think it would be remiss for me not to note that. But Sue, thank you very much for this report. Again, I'm not going to do this every meeting, but because this is going to Cabinet and it is a really important document, just want to show of hands that everyone's supportive of this, please. And again, Leslie, that is unanimous. So thank you very much, Sue, for that report. And we now come on to item number 8 on the agenda, which is the update on the Education Infrastructure Contribution Policy. Sue Avison, show this morning.
Thank you. Sorry. This is the encore one, I promise. So yeah, the report in front of you today is around the education infrastructure policy, and this was approved and implemented by Cabinet in December 2017. So Cabinet has now been asked to approve an update of the policy, specifically in order to approve the increase in request for contribution towards special educational needs provision in the county to reflect the increased number of young people requiring specialist provision. The key principles within the original policy still remain, with the objectives of providing a consistent approach when assessing the impact of housing development on local schools, and ensure the appropriate funding contribution is received from the developer. It had been expected that the education infrastructure policy would be subsumed within the council-wide infrastructure delivery plan. However, there has been a delay in the implementation of the infrastructure delivery plan, and so that is still some months away, also due to a change in government policy and current consultation about planning for your future, and this is expected also to have an impact on the developer contributions. So we are now just updating our current policy in light of the delay. And really just the amendments to this policy that are just different to previously. So I'll just highlight a couple of those. So the number of children that we've spent quite a lot of time talking about this morning in Northumberland who have complex special needs has risen from 3% in our school age population to 4%. So since 2017 through to today, it's increased by 1%. Therefore, the education infrastructure contribution policy that is attached as appendices 1 to your report has been updated to reflect the change in the pupil population. There is also changes in terms of the number of primary and secondary pupils in mainstream in the county. This has also altered slightly since 2017, resulting in the need to reflect this change in the pupil yield factor that we use when calculating the number of pupils that rise from a housing development. So we are reducing the number of pupils in primary and increasing the number of pupils in secondary. Again, this is in line with the falling birth rate, again, that has been identified in the school organisation plan, and the two policies do tie together quite closely. So just a little bit of background, and I know we're always interested in how effective the policy is. Since the implementation of the policy in 2017, you'll see in the report it highlights that we've achieved £17.8 million has been secured through developer contributions, and that is to support growth in school places as a result directly of the impact of increasing pupil numbers as a result of the housing development. So the funding is completely linked to growing capacity. It isn't about refurbishing toilets in schools or refurbishing libraries. The policy is really clear. It has to be where there is an impact on school places. And although those are the contributions that we've got confirmed. We've actually also received around 10% of that has actually been paid to date, because it is linked to the number of houses that are actually developed. So it's really just to reassure yourselves and Cabinet that the policy is really effective. The consistent approach means that we spend less officer time negotiating. It's very clear before anybody comes to provide housing development in Northumberland what our expectations are around education infrastructure. So not only are we achieving a considerable amount of money, we're also saving officer time in terms of negotiations as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Do you have any comments? Councillor Swinburne is indicating.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that, Sue. I welcome these reviews with regards to developer contributions towards education and indeed infrastructure. That comes from builds that goes on in various areas. And let's make no bones about it. When developers come along and build loads of houses in many of our areas, and I think it's fair to say that I don't think there's an area throughout Northumberland that hasn't had new builds over the past few years. You know, they don't build it just to be nice and put nice, pretty houses in these areas. They do it for profit. And because of that, there is extra strain on education, on all of the resources within the areas that they build. Recently, in our town of Cramlington, one of the developers took their application back to planning because they wanted to reduce the amount of contribution because they said it wasn't profitable for them, and they had that 106 money reduced. And I saw some comments from residents to say, well, that's only right. The council should be paying for this. The council should be paying for education. The council don't have any money. It's a public purse. It's resident funding. So the profits that come from developers pay bonuses for the CEO of £75 million. So for them to say that they can't afford it is absolute hogwash. They can afford it. We don't pay our CEO a bonus of £75 million, and I would be damn sure that if we did, residents would be jumping up and down and saying, why aren't you investing that money into Northumberland? And I'd be jumping up and down with them. So it's only right that we do review the developer contributions, and the developers do need to be contributing as well as profiting off the people who are buying these houses. So thank you for all the effort that goes into making sure that these contributions are appropriate. And that's all I wanted to say on that. But thank you for the report.
Thank you, Mark. It was less of a question, more of a statement, which I think we're on with there. Councillor Thorne.
Yes, you know, I'd just like to back the other argument that sort of Councillor Swinbank saying from the planning point of view. You know, as Chairman of Strategic Planning, we do get applications coming forward that are difficult to develop, and the financial macerations, the financial programme doesn't always work out as they say. And as, you know, receptive planners, as planners that are taking on arguments that these house builders are giving us, we are receptive to the fact that some sites are difficult to deliver, and, you know, we understand why sometimes the amount allocated under Section 106 has to go down. So, you know, it's, you know, I'm speaking with two hats on now. You know, yes, I'd like to see the amount stay there for education, but I do understand too why some sites are very difficult to deliver, especially brownfield sites. Yeah.
Thank you. So
just balancing up the argument, Chair.
Right, thank you. So well, nothing if not fair on this all views taken into account. I just think as a point, it was December 2017, Sue rightly pointed out, that I actually took this through Cabinet because I couldn't believe that we'd never asked developers ever for money towards education, when actually building houses usually resulted in people then coming there with children needing to be educated. So, you know, it's an eminently sensible thing to do. I just think that we shouldn't send out a message today that come build your houses in Northumberland and get away with paying as little as possible. Actually, I think what we should be saying is, if you're building, make sure you do your planning first, and then if you can't build on that, don't come and build. But it is absolutely astounding that we've got nearly £18 million there captured, which we wouldn't have had previously. So I think this again is a really, really good policy that we have. There are some amendments to it, which is alluded to in this report. I was actually just going to ask something, if I can, which is on one of the recommendations. It says, note that the policy has had some general, minor, non-material amendments to wording for clarification purposes. I feel like I'm watching Yes Minister. Can you tell me what that means?
That'll just be the numbers.
Oh.
That'll obviously just be the changes to
Right, okay.
to the numbers and the calculation.
Great believer in keeping things simple. Like you've explained that one. So, what?
Chairman, could
Chair,
I just say one more word?
Yeah.
I think it would be useful too, if we got more notification of where the money is being spent. Often as councillors, we're beat about the head for giving these planning permissions. And, there's often a cry from the voter, the resident, to say, well, when are you going to extend our schools? When has the money been spent? So, a better flow of information to councillors about, yes, we're adding to the school, we're putting a new build up. It would be nice to know a little bit more about when some of this Section 106 money is being spent, because sometimes to the public it just seems to be allocated, and when is it being spent? A little bit more information on where it's been spent and when would help us sort of back that corner.
Yeah. We've got Councillor Stewart as well.
If I'm back to you, Trevor, it would be appropriate, I think, for all members of the Strategic Planning Committee to have training in 106 as well, which I know you've been asking for, but if we can push it a little bit harder. Cheers, thank you.
Okay.
Wow, we're on fire this morning. Well done. So, and again, I mean, one of the things which I did put out to members of the committee was around developing some task and finish groups within this. It is probably something which is of interest to everyone. Maybe this is a discussion we can have over the next few weeks, but it would strike me that maybe one of the things that we could look at is some additional, more deep dive work on that education contribution, and where there is flex in it, or if there isn't flex in it, what has or hasn't been spent and how it's been allocated. But I think we can pick up on that, because clearly this has generated a lot of interest. But I think we note the point about training for members on planning, I think, which would be a good idea. So again, because this is going to be going to Cabinet, which they, I think, will be taking next week, I just want to show of hands on this one that we're in support of this. So. Okay, thank you. That is unanimous. And thank you very much, Sue, this morning for your very detailed reports that you've been giving us. So I'm going to give you a bit of time off now, because we're moving on to item number 9, which is the Children's Social Care Self-Assessment Report. And Graham Wrighty, you're going to be taking that.
Thank you, Chair. And obviously a hard act following Sue for the meeting. I'm going to just start by just being clear about how the self-assessment fits in with the regulatory oversight of our children's services. So the self-assessment is requested by Ofsted and is used to inform our annual engagement meeting with them, which we have in the 28th of this month. But also as part of helping us prepare for that regionally, our improvement partners regionally. We have a Director's Challenge, which is next week, again looking at the content and our evidence and our findings of our self-assessment. Just to give us challenge and make sure we've been scrutinised in preparation for when we meet with Ofsted later this month. And Ofsted will look at this and a range of other information and data for this annual engagement meeting. And coming out of that annual engagement meeting, they will probably decide where they're going to focus their next visit. Because every year we will have some contact with Ofsted, and this time will probably be a focus visit, which will look at a specific area of our practice, and they will decide that following the annual engagement meeting and their scrutiny and challenge of our self-assessment. So that's where it fits within the regulatory framework, again, and also with regional colleagues in terms of our regional improvement support. In terms of self-assessment, clearly it's a very detailed and lengthy document. We've pulled it together from a range of sources. Obviously, in the period of this self-assessment, we've had the Ofsted and ILACs and the inspection, the findings or the key findings which are included in that, and obviously that helps us understand where we're at in terms of the quality of what we're providing for our children, young people and their families. But we'll use a range of other methods to inform the self-assessment, our quality assurance work, feedback from service users, complaints, learning from complaints, learning from our staff. So a whole range of elements to inform the detail and content of the self-assessment. In terms of the findings, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but we'll reassure members that detailed elements of that are subject to member scrutiny in various fora, including this one, and also in the corporate parenting group, where we drill down into much more detail on the elements of that. But obviously, over the last year, we've had the pandemic as well. And I will again make the point that our safeguarding and social work services were maintained throughout the pandemic. We maintained the care of our children, looked after despite increasing numbers. And we also looked at very creative ways of supporting children and families virtually and through the use of technology. And again, what we will do is try and learn from that and how we can embed that into our, and are embedding that into our practice going forward. But I think overall the findings of where we're at, again, whilst we would never ever rest on our laurels, we're very pleased with the Ofsted findings showing the progress that we have made. But again, we know we never crack this work. We always want to be better, because that's what our children and young people deserve in Northumberland. So we're always striving to keep improving, and we use this self-assessment to inform our continuous improvement plan. But even taking into account the pandemic, all the work and the quality assurance methods we use do show that we continue to maintain the quality of practice and improvements in our work. We have identified some of our challenges, which is about ensuring the consistency of good practice across all services all of the time. There are particular areas where we want to continue to improve the effectiveness of our work, in particular areas such as around neglect and domestic abuse, which ties into safeguarding partnership priorities as well. But what we've got coming out of this, and again, within the documents, at the end of the document, there is a summary of the key areas for our continuous improvement plan going forward. Areas we think that we need to improve our practice, but also what we're also trying to do is take into account national and regional developments that are coming our way. So, for example, there is currently an independent review of children's social care being led by Josh McAllister, looking at a whole range of the work of social care, looking to try and ways of improving and prioritise that. And both Kath and myself were at a meeting with Josh McAllister earlier this week. And we in Northumberland and the region have also contributed to that case for change so far. So we're using our learning and our staff understanding to feed into that. There's also other legislation coming out, the domestic abuse legislation, which I know members had some at a different scrutiny meeting this week, the progress of that. There's changes in the legislation around our placements. So, for example, now there's a challenge for us. It is illegal for us to place a child of under 16 who is looked after in an unregistered or unregulated placement. That is a real challenge for us. Placement sufficiency continues to be a challenge around a small number of young people with complex needs. So what we've used this for is to inform our continuous improvement plan, which are detailed actions, which we monitor on a monthly basis through our senior team to make sure we continue to drive the areas we need to progress and respond to, both in terms of our understanding of the quality of our practice. And the main way we will continue to improve that is our signs of safety framework. It's a way of working that engages families, engages children, gives clear focus on what we're trying to do. And that will be the key driver for the areas that we need to improve on. But as I say, we also want to be sighted on other national and other developments coming out of way. So we are prepared for and moving towards those in the key way. So I think rather than going through the detail, that's where we're at the moment. I say I'm happy to take any detailed comments on any elements of that, but they are subject to member scrutiny in this and other forums.
Thank you, Graham. Do I have any comments or observations from any members of the committee? Councillor Swinburne.
Just thank you for that, Graham. And as Graham's mentioned, much of this information has either been up before other scrutiny committees or has been in front of this scrutiny committee anyway. And it's worth noting that this is probably going to be slightly different because of the pandemic. A lot of processes and the methods have changed. So moving forward, I think it's fair to say we've adapted quite considerably and we've changed our methods. So this is probably going to be different from previous ones anyway, because we've changed in many areas as to the service we provide, and learnt to provide a different service in better ways in many instances. So what's going to happen with this one will be different, and I know it's different, you know, when we do this anyway, because we learn and we improve and we look to do that, but we've learnt in different ways, if you understand where I'm coming from. But one thing that I do like to see in here, and I always like to see in here, is section 2.1, and that's the focus that we've got in here on our own workforce. So yes, it's about the people in Northumberland we look after, but it's also about making sure we're looking after our own workforce and the welfare of our own staff as well. And I'm really pleased to see that in the report, so thank you.
And I think, Councillor Swinburne, that's a very valid point that you've made there. I'd also commend, if nobody else wants to make any comments, the format of this report, because a self-assessment tool is, it's about being a critical friend, but it's actually opening up your eyes to where you can improve and do better, and almost taking the eyes of an Ofsted inspector and using that to refocus. And I just draw the committee's attention to what looks like page 67 of the report, and it says on care leavers, and it references what Ofsted said: care leavers benefit from support workers who visit them regularly, understand their needs. This good work is clearly evidenced in care leavers' case records. That's great. Ticky box, brilliant. We're doing a good thing there. But I like the way it goes on further and it actually does the deep dive into what can we do better. And part of that, what can we do better, is we've actually asked young people. And that is contained on page 69. So some young people have indicated that more preparation for leaving care is needed. It's a whole narrative about how we're going to make that happen. And that is a really good exemplar of how you can use self-assessment to improve your practice. But more importantly, Ofsted, who we all love, will actually see that and see that we are actually realistic about what we do, that we're honest about what we do, and we are engaging about what we do. So I think the format of this report is excellent. Whoever's done it, Graham, was it you?
It's a combination of colleagues.
Well done to you all. I like the format of it, and I think this is and I look forward to whatever Ofsted's opinion is of us, which I'm sure will be marvellous. If that's a Ofsted
I'm glad you
rating.
do, because I don't.
We love Ofsted. We love them. Right, so thank you very much. Has anyone got any other comments or observations on that? No. So we note that report, and that goes forward. So thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Hodgson, I do apologise.
That's all right. No, it was just an update really on the progress on the building of the two children's homes.
Yeah, I can take that. We are, as you know, we had identified some land which has now become, we now realise we can't build on that particular land, so we are trying to identify alternative sites for that. We have got planning permission for one site, and we are also waiting to hear whether or not a bid to DFE for some additional funding is successful. So we are we're not holding off, but we are looking to see whether or not we get that funding to determine what the next steps will be.
Right. So what's the temporary impact of that?
In terms of our placement sufficiency and our placement capacity, we are continuing to see a reduction in the numbers of children who are currently looked after by us. I say that guardedly, because it has just gone under the 400 mark, which is it's the lowest it's been for the last 18 to 20 months. So I say that guardedly, but we are starting to see a reduction in the numbers of children who need to become looked after. In addition to that, we are potentially over the next few months going to see a number of children who've previously had out-of-county placements we are going to see a reduction in the numbers of those who, because of their age ranges, 16 to 18, they are likely to either be coming back or they will become 18, so they will no longer need those placements. I think the biggest challenge for us is around emergency placements and how we manage those children whose placements either break down or who need to come into care on an emergency basis, who may have some complex and challenging needs, and we continue to try and identify packages of care that can best support those. So that's kind of where our thinking is at this point in time.
Right, no, thanks.
And as if by magic, if you look on an item which we're about to cover, we actually do have a children's home placement sufficiency report coming to the November fact. So we're well on with that. So Graham and your team, thank you very much for that report. Well noted. We're now coming on to the item on the work programme and monitoring report, which, Chris, you're going to take us through some of that.
The work programmes, it's an opportunity for members to raise any issues that they think they would like to place on the work programme that we should look at. As Councillor Daly said, next month we'll have a report on children's home place sufficiency. And there is only one other pre-scrutiny report at the moment, which isn't coming until February. But if there's anything members want to add to the work programme, I just need to raise it with myself or Councillor Daly.
And again, I'll just reinforce that point, because when we started on this new electoral term, I did put an offer out to anybody. If you want anything adding to a work programme, something you want to look at, please, some deep dive work, please get in touch, because this committee is really, really important. So what I'll do is I'll send out a reminder to everyone again on that. And I think what we'll be doing over the next probably couple of weeks is just finalising some of the task and finish work that we are going to do. And if you remember, we had a really good piece of task and finish work which Councillor Swinburne led on, which was around our school exclusions, which led to a transformative reduction in the number of young people excluded from our schools. So what we do here has real impact out there. So it's really important for me that we actually get some... Sorry, Councillor Ball, we're happy to bring you in.
Can I just check, is there any work being done with regards to the wholesale gas and electric prices and the impact that's going to have on schools and educations across Northumberland?
So I'll pass that on to Kath
Thank you.
McAvoy, you can take that one on.
Thanks, great question. I know that it's recently hit the media. I think it's probably fair to say that we are currently looking at the potential impact that this will have on our schools, looking to identify what support the government intend to provide to schools as a result of that, and determining what advice we can give to schools. So we can't at this point give you a full understanding of that, because we don't understand that ourselves at this point, but we will happy to bring something back in the future as and when we're in a better position to understand that.
Yeah, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Councillor
that's
Stewart.
Sue, because you haven't spoken for a few moments there. The new builds we're talking about, huge investment into Northumberland schools, fantastic. Green aspect of that, energy.
That's very interesting. I ran a workshop yesterday, Councillor Stewart. Yeah. So yeah, we're very much looking at that in terms of the development for the Astley build. Obviously around embedded carbon, reduced carbon emissions as part of that development. So when the business case comes back through this committee, you will be seeing that we'll be presenting 4 options in terms of how we're going to reduce carbon, either embedded through the build or the continuing running costs of the building. So again, we'll pick that up. And in terms of ongoing work, I think there were 3 schools that actually had air source heat pumps installed over the summer holiday. Again, 100% funded by grants, so we are working through, you know, some of our more challenging schools. I'm thinking about Stamfordham, for instance. 100% on electric heating has now had an air source pump installed there, so should hopefully help with their ongoing costs as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So again, it might be worthwhile at some point bringing a report on, Paul, I'll finish what I was saying, then I'll bring you in, bringing a report on how green is our estate, which I think would be, sorry, I don't want to give you extra pressure there, Sue, but there we go. Paul.
I just want to say, Chair, that we're also, as Church of England, working with Northumberland County Council in one of our schools, seeing how we can reduce the carbon footprint as well with air source heat pump. But something to note maybe is a partnership that's required to bring three-phase electricity to some of our rural areas, because the cost of making the conversion is actually then doubled or even tripled when you have to three-phase supply of up to £100,000 to the electricity companies. So it's something that maybe needs to be considered on a wider aspect of Sue and a team working really hard and working with us to do this in some of our rural schools, but we had a block when actually we need the electricity to then run the additional power. So it's a great bit of work, and again, it's great to work in partnership with the county on this, but it's just sometimes we need to go a bit further maybe to see what else support we can get for our rural communities.
I am aware that the leader of the council, Glenn Sanderson, has actually written to the Chancellor and to the Education Secretary about some of the issues around heating and fuel costs. So I think we await an answer on that one, because it is something which obviously we need to be aware of. But thank you for that. So again, just reinforce point, please get into contact with Chris and myself for future work stream. Come on to the final item on the agenda, which is any urgent business. I've not been informed of any. I'm not taking anything from the floor. So on that basis, thank you very much for your time this morning and your input, and we'll see you all again in November. So thank you.